Hey Bree,
Hi, Jane.
welcome back. You're the first repeat guest on the podcast.
Oh my God, you didn't tell me that beforehand. I feel like I just earned a gold star.
And yeah, I'm kind of feeling an unconventional format for this. I'm thinking, yeah, so we are going to talk about reading a field today, and I'm thinking that like instead of introducing you and introducing the topic and stuff, it would be really fun to just dive into it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. Um, I guess I will say a little bit about what I think a field is, though, before we start, and then maybe let you do the same. It's so hard to talk about these things, which is why I kind of like want to go straight into it, but I will say a little bit about what I think it means to read an energy field. So there are these kind of different levels that you can do it on. You can do it on an individual level, a group level, and then I think another way that you are often doing this is even on a bigger like societal or collective level. But for the purpose of what I'm gonna say, I'll frame this as like an individual person. Um, to me, I think an energy field or reading someone's field is about like this information that we're kind of all carrying around with our bodies and our beings at all times. In my experience, there's an unbelievable amount of information that is just available in our being that can be sensed into. It's emotional, it's energetic, it's etheric and spiritual. It has to do with our families, it has to do with our relationships and the ecosystems we're a part of. And there is definitely a really dynamic, ephemeral quality to it, but there is also like this very core, um, not unchanging, but consistent in some way through time piece to it. The things that kind of make us us, versus like these random, um, um, unidentifiable things or something, these like blobs. Um, and so reading that, I would say, is like developing really subtle sensing or receiving or listening capacities to take in some of that information at any given time that I would say is like relevant to the context that people are in. Um, there is also something I think about developing a relationship or a connection with somebody and then that reading happening over time. So like yeah, I've gotten to see you do this a lot with me and with groups of people. And I've known you for probably like 3 years now, and you have a pretty good feel for my energy, I would say, at this point. And so every time that you read it, it's in from my perspective, you're like getting deeper into it and it's faster. There's such a knowing there, and
Mhm.
maybe a knowing of what my energy is like, but also a knowing of how to interact with it and read it and communicate with it. So there is this piece that has to do with relationship and trust and time.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I just made all that up on the spot. So I don't that does I don't know how like complete that is, but I'm curious how does that sound to you? Does that ring true? And are there other things you would say about reading a field?
Yeah, I think there's so many pieces that you named. So I think about reading a field, but also working with a field. And those are two kind of different things. So I think you don't necessarily, some people are not great at reading a field, but they're very good at working with a field. And some people are really good at reading a field, but they have no ability to work with a field.
Hmm.
And the truth is we're always working with each other's fields. So, we're really always just like two vibrating beings that are interacting and doing a dance that is mostly invisible to most people and thinking and often mislabeling that the conversation is the verbal conversation. And if we go beyond the verbal conversation, well, then we like, well, what's the body language? So I think those are kind of like the three-dimensional places that most people are focused on or attuned to in normal kind of people who are present and sensing. But then there's places where you go where there's much bigger conversations that you can kind of hear or sense in people. And those conversations can be like conversations that are your grandmother's conversation that is coming through you. But there can also be like your actual grandmother coming through you, like not just her tone or her conversational style, but actually the being that wants to be in that conversation. And then there's the piece of just like the influences of things like the patriarchy, the influences of things like racism. They have their own tonality and pattern sets that also show up in the conversation. And so when you're looking at somebody, you're really looking at layers that are there. And so the most gross layer, which is like the conversation they're having with you, is always being informed by these other bodies, these other layers that they may or may not be aware of. And what I always think is fascinating is that when we talk to somebody about something, like if I call a friend or, whatever, and I'm like talking about a subject, I can feel and perceive that the shit I'm sharing is like an 18th of the story. But my mind feels so convinced that it knows something. But I'm aware that there's other pieces behind it. And oftentimes, as you know, I'll stop mid conversation and be like, wait, there's this other piece that's coming through. There's this other piece that's part of it. And so, this, like, I think this regard for allowing ourselves to be informed in any conversation, which is both verbal, it's also like walking into a room is a conversation, getting in your vehicle is a conversation, like going to the ocean is a conversation. We're having conversations all the time. And if you can't get quiet in your mind, you can't hear the other conversations. And so I think there's like really a piece that when you start to hear all these conversations, psychics hear a lot of conversations and it can become confusing and noisy about which conversation to listen to. Um, but I think that, like, when you hear all those conversations, it gives you the ability to choose in a way that you don't really have if you are just attached to this one dimensional conversation that seems to be the only thing that's happening.
Yeah, and that seems also true of people who do, let's say, healing work, and they can hear a certain conversation that's not the one that a lot of people think is the main one, but it's also still just one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. 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 Yeah. And I think it really tracks in some ways to like, at least for me, I don't think this is true for everybody, but I know for me, I live in a very, very, very multidimensional field. And so at any given time, things could be pulled out from like, a long, long time ago because that's the thing that's popping up at that particular time. And so there's room for it. It can be
Mm,
there.
cool.
Yeah.
So what's this? This is a cool distinction between reading the field and working with it. What's the difference?
So I think about people that I know who are really good field readers. Like they can look at a picture and they can describe all sorts of things in like a two-dimensional picture of somebody. And like I could look at a picture of somebody and I could tell you some things, but not as good as some other people where like they can see ants, they can see all sorts of influences from a picture. But if they were to work with that person's field, that's not their line of work. So when I work with a field, whether it's a person or a big, big body, like the earth or the body of the patriarchy or something like that, or the grid in a particular area, I actually see very little. I'm often not seeing location. I'm often not seeing the details that people really like to have. What I'm perceiving is the movement of the ocean. And so there's hot areas, there's cold areas, there's old areas, there's dead areas. So, like when I do my clearings and I close my eyes and drop into trance, I'm perceiving all these layers of movement essentially. And I'm looking for the movement that feels like there's coherence. I'm looking for the places where there's discord. It's basically the best description I can give you is it's like standing in front of a giant orchestra and I am the conductor and I can like hear when the brass section comes on and I can hear and see the strings and I can see when they don't know each other and I can see when it's also a lie in the field, like when something's coming in the field and it doesn't belong to like the organic material. Immediately I see that thing and it gets kicked out. So there's like the way I perceive it feels more like it's like feeling in the darkness or perceiving underwater, and also very musically, very, very much about tune and song and discord and harmony, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask. How can you tell when something isn't organic? Do you get like a really strong sense for the organic? Um, is it like having a sense for what is organic, or is it noticing when something is discordant?
It feels like it's having an I can't even say it's my sense, it's the field sense that the field absolutely knows when something is organic. And as soon it's so quantum that as soon as my attention lands on something, immediately the decision, the knowing is there. And in that split second, which is less than a second, if it's not organic, it's gone. It because I've seen it. And in a quantum way, once you perceive it, once you see it, there's an effect on that substance, on that vibrating material. If you can't see it, which is the most interesting part, if it is purposefully hidden in the field, then you can see sometimes the inflammation of something being hidden, but you can't see what is being hidden. But you know something is hidden because you see the inflammatory response to it and you begin to recognize that signature. When this first started happening for me, at the very beginning, it was like endless. Like I would wake up in the morning, and from the moment I woke up, I was being taken on these shamanic journeys. And I never knew where I was going to be taken. But it took me like a long time to recognize that over and over, I was being taken to this very similar place. And it seemed to be orienting me to these layers of the building blocks of reality. And when it had gone on long enough, I was recognizing, oh, there's a layer of symbols. Oh, there's like a realm of death. It's not just like that death is an event, there's a realm of death. And in that realm of death, there are signatures that are there are signatures that are symbols that we recognize that go with that place. And so, like, I started mapping and tracking all of these things unknowingly and realizing that what my field was doing was taking me to places where I was making these giant maps of reality so that when I meet with somebody or I work in a specific place, I recognize the signatures instantly because they've been mapped. And honestly, Jane, whether I know them or not is irrelevant. A lot of times I'm so deep I I'm there's no words that could come out. And sometimes there's reading. If you're a meditator, meditators know this. When you get very quiet, a thought will come through and it will, or a signature will come through and it will announce itself before you even see it. So, like, you'll hear something like anger before you even see the feeling because you can perceive it ahead of feeling it because the quantum is faster than the emotion. And so this is the same thing. As soon as it's perceived, I can hear the signature announcing itself, but then it's on to like 5,000 other signatures that are happening at the same time. I could never, it's happening so fast, I could never keep up with it. And it doesn't matter.
It does seem like a huge amount of information to be in touch with when you're working with somebody. How do you know what order to go in, or like what is leading the whole thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, when I look at somebody when I'm working with somebody and I'm looking at them, you said this in the beginning when we were prepping for this. You said to me, I see your view change. Like I see you go from regular seeing or converse, what I would call conversational seeing. Because people think I walk around and I'm trying to see this shit all. I'm not interested.
Oh
I
my
don't
God,
care.
totally, 100%.
We don't care about your sex life or like any of those things. Like, don't want to know, you know? But if you're paying me, or like if we're friends and you want me to look for something, I'm going to switch my site. And so when I switch my site, I'm like, then it's like my regular eyes are gone and my regular conversation is gone. And I'm basically sinking back into like the galaxy, and I start seeing people in layers. So it's like in the front, they're talking to me and I'm talking back to them too. And I'm listening to the content because there are cues in the pacing of their words, their language, what's hot, what lights up for them, what doesn't. But then when I like sink a little backer more fully back into the field with them, I'm looking at like literally what's behind them. And what's behind them are these layers of information. And I think my discernment about whether I call those things out or not in the session is like, it's my heart that knows. It's the best way I can tell you, is that my heart knows whether they are prepared for that information or not. And I will not speak. If it looks risky and I'm not sure, I will often not speak it. And I have an agreement with the field that if it shows up 3 times, I will speak it. Like I will implicitly ask the field to like show it again if it feels like it's a risk and I don't know this person or I'm worried it will harm them.
Yeah, fascinating. So are you doing a lot of this the whole time, this kind of back and forth
It's
nonverbal
all I'm
communication with the
doing.
field? Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's mostly all I'm doing. And what's interesting is that their field recognizes me.
Right, right,
So they may not recognize me, but their field recognizes me, and I watch those reactions too,
right,
which often come across as like what people would call transference reactions. Like, they're defensive, or, there's all these things that will come through. And most of the time, I just ignore that.
right,
Where in regular psychotherapy, you go after that.
right.
But for me, I'm not really interested in that material because I got something much deeper I'm doing with this person. And I have the confidence that underneath that, they want that deeper thing. And that's what they're really there for. And if we join in that place, the things that are on top can all get sorted and they don't need a lot of attention. It's
Totally.
why I really don't pay a lot of attention to people's emotions either, unless the emotion is incredibly emergent and sincere. And when that happens, I'm all about it. Because in that moment, it is the emergent truth that's happening. But what people don't know is that most of the time, what they show up with is a bunch of crap. And I'm moving that shit out of the way to have the real conversation.
Totally. Oh my God, there's like 8 branches I just had from the stuff you were saying. One is that My God, there's so much information. The thing about the field recognizing you, I think that's one of the things that has felt really special to me, just in working with you, but also just in knowing you and hanging out and talking, is like there's a thing where I can see that my body and my energy responds to you in a really unusual, unique way. And so, not in the transferency way that you're describing, it's more like my field recognizes something in you or where you are coming from and really opens to that because of the unique place that you are in and what you can see from there and what you are after and what you're not after.
Yeah.
And this also feels connected to the heart piece. This is one of the topics that I wanted to talk about today. Is there's something in your style that it's not always like real soft and sweet. It's really going after the thing, and it's really it's got like a very young, direct intensity to
Yeah.
it, but I have never felt it waver from a heartfulness. Like I have never questioned in any layer of myself where you're coming from, or like, oh, why is Bree attacking me? Or like, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
those feel really connected to me, and I'm curious about that integration because I think that's super rare in a practitioner, but it I'm super energetic, and it's always so I get so much information just from how my body responds to somebody in their field, because I respond so differently to different practitioners and stuff. And I that's one of the things that has always felt so interesting about you to me is the way that there is that um it's like what opens up and reveals itself in your presence, and the what you can perceive, but also the heart quality. Those feel really connected to me in why that happens.
Yeah, I think there's a part of me that is so mm, desirous of only, or yeah, it's so deeply desirous of the kind of generative intimacy that comes from connecting with another person, or the seagulls or the pelicans or the ocean, it's all the same, or the flowers, um from a place that is just stripped. And it's what I talk about with like being the right predator, that, and I'll say a little more about that, but like I think I feel this urgency in my being of like, what are we doing if we're not doing that? Like, we're wasting our time. And sometimes it's right to hang back with somebody, like I really respect that too, where somebody's at. I could know them for a long time and not go after that material with them because the whole field in them is not at that space. And so it's not like I'm ever trying to bring somebody there who isn't ready to go there. Um, but I think when the permission is there or the desire is there, I'm also not messing around. I don't want to work with people for a long time. I'm not interested in making money that way. That's not what I'm about. I'm really interested in the material being revealed. And I'm interested in the fun of that, like the play of that. And yeah, and how once you're kind of in that unadorned, kind of naked space together, it's just constantly evolutionary. Like the conversations just become so, it doesn't matter where you go because they're all honest. And that's the whole point. And so, this whole notion of like, we have to find a better partner or a better friend or a better, it's like, no, you just actually need to have honesty with all the people who are in your life, and they have to like feel courageous enough to like meet you there, because pretty much almost everything can be worked out in that space, because it's like everybody kind of wants the same thing in that space. Like, it's not that divergent. People want to, like, when you're in that space, you just actually want to hang out there and play.
Yeah, I love that. We were talking a little before the recording about what people are devoted to, and when you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, that is a big. There's this thing with you about like nakedness and naked truth, I would say, and the kind of playful. I also think of your work and your model. There's a way that it feels to me like a game, a huge multi-level, always like evolving, differentiating game.
Yeah.
And so these feel like things that you are very devoted to. Just your being is like that's the thing for you.
Yeah, I really like I it's like starving for me without intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like and then the form of intimacy that I like is not performative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
There,
most of our world works on performative.
right, right. Yeah. Um, yeah, there was something I was going to say when you were talking about not being super interested in the emotional part. This is another thing I find really interesting about your work and the way you work with the field. Um, because I'll do a session with you, I don't know, once a year or something, and emotion, there always is actually intense emotion in it, but it's in these little bursts and they're very particular. I guess what I would say from my perspective is it's like often you're finding a gate or a threshold in me, and then there's
Yes.
it's got this ring of fire around it. It's got like maybe like shame and terror and deathy stuff, and that's the emotion that comes up in the session, and it can be very quick actually and like kind of straightforward. It's kind of just naming that and having space for it and being able to see it, and it's okay. And then it's like kind of like, okay, now that's it's not like this big whole like emotional story or something. Actually, I think there are stories sometimes. Like
I'm
that's
kind
part
of
of it too. You're finding the stories too. I think that's another really great thing about the way you read fields and work with them is actually finding what is the real story. And that's also often very simple, I find.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think the difference for me is that like I'm pretty much live in emptiness. And so I don't like visit emptiness where it's like, oh, I meditate to go to the place of emptiness. Like I'm moving from and within emptiness all the time. And so because of that, when I go into working with somebody, I just shift into that space where I'm not being a human. And as soon as I shift into that space, it's like everything is available because everything is arising from emptiness. And so I trust that whatever is arising in any given session is exactly the material for us on that particular day.
Yeah, you also mentioned the thing about your eyes because that it's cool that that really matches my experience of seeing you do it. Your eyes totally change and they do
Yeah.
get kind of glassy. Is there anything else you would say about what it's like to move into that mode?
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is how I wake up every morning is in that space. And so it's very trancy. Like the attention is very, very high and the discernment is very, very high, but it's not me discerning. And I would say the seeing is coming more from like here and like here than it is from like my eyes, so to speak. I'm seeing much lower. Um, and I'm listening too. So there's a seeing that's happening, but there's also like a very deep listening to like the stories that are coming through. So I think there's the sight piece, but there's also the like narrative piece. And you're right. Often I'll look for the door. Like I'll poke around to look for the door. I do this on physical bodies too when I start on them. Like I'll look for the door, and once I find the door or the gate, it's like then it's off and going. Then your field or whoever I'm working on is like, okay, the gate is open, and then it's just showing me. So if I'm on a body, it's like I'll be at the feet, let's say, and then I'll know when that's done. And then usually before I leave the feet, it's telling me go to this other place. So I go to the other place, and then I might have to like touch a body like in a bunch of places until I can feel it being like right there. And as soon as I feel right there, it's like I'm holding it, or there's a place I'm holding and then a place I'm reading, which is more familiar to me. It's like I could be holding under the body, but touching above the body somewhere, and the reading is happening from this hand, but the stabilizing is happening from this hand. And so, there's kind of like I was at somebody's feet this week, and I started with her head. Sometimes that's not true, but I started with her head and her neck. And when I got to her feet, this is very common for me when I'm at somebody's feet, is like I will grab their ankles when it's time. I'll grab their ankles and I'll start to lean back a little bit. And literally it's like steering a ship, and I'm like subtly moving each leg to like attune their whole body just through using like their legs and their feet. And it's wild. It's so cool. And it's all harmonics. The whole thing is harmonics. And I'm just like listening for where something is off and like moving it a little bit, and like sometimes running some breath through there. And most of the time, what people are aware of when I'm doing that is their stories. They're aware of like the impressions that are coming through, the memories, the stories. But the next day or 2 days later, they're like, what the hell was that? You know? And so what I've learned is that this field, it's a catalyst. It's a very potent both invitation and catalyst. So most of the time I could be with somebody and be like blah 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 blah. But if I'm running the right harmonics, what I'm actually speaking is less consequential. And I think I do a really good job of speaking the words that feel like they are attuned in the specific language and words that want to match actually what is happening, so that it is landing in multiple bodies in people, that their intellect can take it through, their emotional body can receive it, and the deeper bodies that often are untouchable can also open to being touched in those spaces. And I think that's a lot of power at one time.
Yeah, that definitely matches my experience of working with you. Sometimes even the intellect can't really hold it
Right.
or make sense of it, but it doesn't matter, and
No.
it's like it trusts it enough. Um, there's also just like such a sense in my body and energy of like coming across a field like yours, and there is so much that wants to had like has been wanting to reveal itself, and like nobody can hear it, you know? So when somebody can, it's like, oh, good, I got a lot to show you.
It's so true. It's so true. This person that I was just working with a couple days ago, yeah, she's having like a major expansion at the moment. And so touching her was like there was so much instant permission when I touched her. And like I found myself laughing while I was at her head, because as I was touching her and attuning her, like her own field was like, oh my God, like, thank you, and like, I'm watching it just take off and I'm thrilled. I'm like, yes, like you're doing it. It's so good. And she's just laying there. And I'm like, I don't even know what she's thinking, but I'm having like the time of my life at her head. And it's like, I'm crying. I'm so excited, like the whole thing is happening there. And essentially, I mean, really, Jane, like down to the bottom, am always just having sex. Like, this is all just really good sex. And so I often say that, like, my field and me, I no longer really want to work with people who I qualify as being unfuckable. And the people who I qualify as being unfuckable are the ones who are so resistant to like actually stepping in. That it's like the whole dialogue between me and them is them teasing me or tempting me with their resistance so they can see what I'm going to do and will I do it and can I do it. And basically, I'm just like, you're fucking boring. Like, you can't pay me enough for this. And so I don't work with unfuckable fields anymore. And I will if I can feel the sincerity under it. But it's always very obvious very quickly. I also don't want to be in unfuckable places. Like pieces of land can be like that too, where like the piece of land is so colonized that like there's no juice there. I don't want to bring the juice to that place. Let somebody else do that. Like, I'm just not interested. I actually just, I'm like old. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be having the good sex all the time. And I may not actually want to get in bed with you, which surprises people because they're like, that was so good for you. And I was like, yes, but that doesn't mean I actually want to fuck you. And I have different qualifications for that, you know? But I am erotic all the time,
Mhm.
like all the time at like Target. You know what I mean? Like Target. You
Uh,
want to be the guy who checks me out because
you,
I'll smile at you. Because if I'm having a good day, I'll be like, yeah, my day is good too. $10.
People don't know what to do with an erotic woman. They're all like, "Oh, this is for me. Good. She wants to fuck me."
Is it? They all think it's for them. They all think it's for them. But I will tell you this, which has been so interesting to me because I have been a person who my whole life, I never have known when men are interested in me. I'm very, very bad at detecting that. I always think no one is interested in me. And so, I've traveled quite a bit. I've traveled a lot on my own. And now I've gotten good at like sitting at the bar and eating food at the bar instead of like at a table by myself. And when you do that, you meet a lot of men. And I've like met a lot of men, all ages, all of them. And somehow they're all telling me the same thing at the end of our time together. They're all saying, wow, that was like the best conversation I have had in a long time. I don't have conversations like that. And they're like, thank you so much. And I'm like, you're welcome.
What do you make of that?
Nobody knows how to be like, there's no intimacy. And I'm not even being technically intimate with these people.
Mm-hmm.
Like we could be talking about all sorts of regular things, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the quality of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the attention of the conversation. It's the interest. And it's not because I'm like trying to be interested. I'm like genuinely interested. And I noticed that even unfuckable people become very fuckable when you're interested because suddenly something turns on in them and they're like, a light goes on and they're like, oh my God, like there's life here. Everybody feels when there's life there. Everybody. And we're so used to there not being life that we're just doing the performative thing of like not expecting any life. It's very sad.
Isn't it interesting how good people censors for when there is life there? Like I do find that to be true. Not that everyone's going to respond well, obviously, and not that they're going to know that they're recognizing it, but I am
Yes.
amazed how consistent that is when people,
Every time.
yeah,
Even at Target in the checkout line,
yeah,
every single time.
yeah,
And I notice it in people.
yeah.
When I'm at the grocery store and somebody checks me out and they make like eye contact, and instantly you know that somebody is there. You feel them there, and instantly the conversation begins. And we
Love
are
that.
most often denying that to each other and ourselves.
Yeah, what you were saying earlier in the conversation about truth and stuff and leading with that, I also find that a lot, like more people than I would expect seem to really want that and go into it in a way that surprises me if I lead with it.
Yes, everybody wants it. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants the same, like, three things. They want to feel like they exist, which is feel like they belong. They want to feel seen, and they want to be intimate. And those are kind of all the same thing.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you about the like harmonics and attunement, and there were one or two other things. I'm having this conversation is happening like so on a not intellectual level for me that I'm struggling to retain my questions, but maybe the other ones will come up. But what is like, let's say the example where you're sitting at someone's feet, holding their ankles, kind of tuning their legs. What do you mean about the harmonics and what's it like to work there? I guess when you say it, I get this impression of like you're working at this level that's very non-conceptual. It's not about physical tissues. It doesn't even sound like what a lot of people would think of as like a spiritual or energetic level. It sounds like straight up tones
It
and
is.
rhythms and
And
things.
and waves.
So yeah, what's that like for you to work with it, sync it up, get it moving?
It just feels so easy. Like that's what happens during the clearings too, is it's like so on some level it's so restful to be in that space because no one's talking to you. So like there's no interference usually. And um I don't know. I think of it in some ways as like, when athletes talk about you hit that space where it's just, you've just found your groove, or musicians feel that way, and the music is just coming through you. It kind of feels like that. And no one is trying to distract me or make me think or pay attention to something else. And so it's just me and that field. And there's like, in the clearings, it really happens where in the first, what I call movement of the clearing, because it feels like it happens like a symphony in different movements. And in the first movement, it's like I'm really mostly clearing the crap out of the stuff that we all inhabit. And in the second movement, there's like more quiet that's coming in. And then I'm working like, feels like emotions, base patterns, things that are personal to people, core stories around shame and those kinds of things. But by the third movement, it's so deep that sometimes, depending on how long I have somebody or a group of people for a clearing, I mean, it can be the movement is almost imperceptible. Like my breathing changes, and it's almost just my eyes that are attuning the field. It's so subtle. The texture is so subtle, and people drop into very, very, very deep states of trance. And when I did the chronic condition study, which was 6 weeks long, 2 times a week, just delivering these energetic attunements and clearings without any explanation or talking to like 45 people, it was incredible to see what the field did. I mean, its geometry started coming out, like because it had these same bodies twice a week for 6 weeks. And so it could really get in there and like begin to develop further. And it really loves that because, like you were saying, once you know somebody and you know their signature, there's a deeper permission to work with the building blocks of their being. And one of the things that I think is so incredible about this, people come all the time and they'll say, like, it's like psychedelics being with you. But what it isn't like with psychedelics is there's no imposition on the field. And so, like, it's an invitation. If people have had enough, this field will not keep going with them. It's like participatory. And so I find that people's ability to integrate the changes is much more like easeful and with less of that pushback that you get from a place where there's more of an imposition or too big of an opening, or you can't metabolize. Because look, almost no one can metabolize. This is the problem of the West. No one can digest. Everybody has an eating disorder. No one can digest. And so you rip open somebody on these multiple levels, and then there's no template for integration and digestion. It's a huge problem. This seems to not have that problem.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Also, I'll just say when you say this field, you're talking about your field. Say
Yeah.
this field, this
Yes.
yeah. I really experienced that with you. I was kind of trying to touch on it earlier, but it's hard to describe. It's fascinating that it's really something unique about your field, how delicate and participatory it is, while also having the kind of power that it has. It's like my system does move very strongly towards it. Like it's almost like any system that has such a lack of force might sometimes feel inert, or like it might struggle to catch the attention of my system and realize that something is really important happening there. You know what I mean? But this one
Yes.
somehow does that. It like is not imposing at all, and yet it
It's
obviously,
magnetic.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a piece of gravity in it that is a part of that. It's like a Shante used to say to me, "You're a gravity well." And it is. It's a little bit like there's a black hole there, like it's just emptiness. And so there's a lot of gravity, but it's not dense. It's gravity that is also very, very light. And so there's something to that seeming juxtaposition about the way we engage with it, that like there's a pull towards it, but it does not feel like you leave with a lot of residue.
right. I
And
think,
I used to worry about that with people. I was worried at the beginning. I was
right,
like, there's shit moving through me that like I don't want other people to experience because it's very dark.
right.
And I had to do it enough where I was like, okay, it's safe. It
Yeah.
won't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of that gravity, how I make sense of it is also just the recognition in my system of something in your system that is this like incredibly esoteric, refined knowledge. You know, it's like recognizing that, and that's part of the gravitational thing. It's like it doesn't need any force or anything beyond an invitation because there is that recognition
Yes.
of like, oh, you have this puzzle piece that is so rare and esoteric and like what my system is looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people wind up feeling that way, even if they don't know it. Like casual people I speak
Yeah,
to,
right,
there's something that happens where they get touched by this thing
right,
that really is kind of a missing piece in our evolution.
right,
And people feel it. They feel the absence in that space and how the evolution wants to be fed by that.
right, totally.
Yeah.
What was the other thing I was going to say about that? Oh, when you're talking about the subtlety of the harmonics and stuff, I get this sense of like, I often have this sense with the way we are in our physical bodies, and maybe it also has something to do with living in a modern society where people on the whole are like overeating and we have all these toxins and our bodies are just overall energetically denser than they need to be, and I think that makes it harder to metabolize all of these
Yes.
gigantic transpersonal energies that are trying to like move through us and evolve us all the time. Like I get
Yeah.
this feeling often that like we end up going down all these fucking rabbit holes sometimes when like there is just some energy trying to move through this dense physical body and getting stuck, and like we don't have
Totally.
to make such a big deal out of it. Like even sometimes just a physical practice or like a subtle energy practice is enough to let something move. And I really, yeah, it's so interesting to hear you talk about how sometimes you're just doing this really subtle thing with even just your eyes or your breath. Like if you drop down enough layers in a person, sometimes maybe the being is just trying to turn 5 degrees to the left.
Right. Totally, 100%. It's often like that. Like we think it's such a big thing, but it's just these tiny, tiny little tweaks. Because essentially, you have this, the way I see it is that you have these layers, and they always look to me like rotating bodies. And so it's like some are spinning in one direction, some are spinning in the other direction. Some are from like a time long ago. So they're in different timestamps too. and they're asynchronous in the way that they're cooperating, like jazz. It is like jazz. And but there is a harmony to it. And oftentimes, you know how I talk so much about like oppressive systems and addiction. And so in those spaces, it's like we take on a harmony or like an arrangement, a musical arrangement inside of ourselves that does not center our song. And our song creates a kind of order in our system. There's a natural order and arrangement to our song. And so when we have this false or forced order on us, our song is still singing. It's not like the song is not singing, but what's presented is discordant or like at odds with. And so I'm looking at those pieces too. And often I can feel somebody's core tone, their core song. And so I'm speaking, and the field is speaking directly to that. And that is what starts to take apart and rearrange the discordance of the things that have gotten put in place architecturally that are really not in an order that allows that song to fully sing.
Yeah, amazing. I love the musicality that you're pointing to. I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about it so much in that way before, but it really resonates for me for you and also just walking through the world and sometimes you meet somebody and you're like, wow, that person's singing. Like everything that they do seems like singing and it all sounds like singing and it all sounds like a perfect harmony. It's yeah.
Yes. Yeah, when I have like been at home for a while and it's not good for me, like I'm too isolated, and then I go to like a hotel or travel or whatever, oftentimes by the first or usually the second night that I'm away, I wake up in the morning and I can hear my whole field singing. It's incredible. And it's like I can just hear it. It's all like just singing and it's all light. The singing is also light.
What do you mean?
It's light. It's actual it's like light. It's like light waves,
Mm,
light particles. And so they're like vibrating, and that's what's happening in the singing.
mm. This is so fun to talk about, and I also am just like I keep landing in this like voidy space of like, what's there even to say? This is just so cool. This is just so fun to play around in. Who needs interview questions? Is there, let me consult my list of interview questions. Is there anything that's like very different for you to work on these bodies at different scale? I love that you call it bodies too, like individual bodies, some of the clearings that you're referencing, and you did the study that you were talking about earlier, the chronic conditions study. You do these clearings with what, anywhere from like, I don't know, 5 to 40 people.
Yeah. Or
Um,
oh yeah.
and then what was the number you said?
Yeah, I mean, there's a piece there about how in some ways the bigger the group, the easier it is, because in a big group, people fall into categories. It's like there's 20 people that have a hammer. There's 10 people that have a piece of wood. And so the field will just quickly scan and assess and start grouping and then work the major patterns. And so, in some ways, there's less interference because I'm not looking at one person and having that conversation. I'm like having a bigger conversation. So it moves fast. Um, yeah, there is a difference when I'm working with a field that is non-human. So like when I'm working in the middle of the night with like a grid
Can
or
I ask
like
you
I'm
one question about the group thing before you talk about that?
yeah. Yeah.
I would guess that when you get a group of people together, something that I notice about group fields and like the erotic in general is that it loves sex. It loves cross-pollinating. So like getting a group together in that kind of intimate clearing setting, the way that you're working, is there a lot of just like the fields talking to each other and exchanging and like that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean I think that's probably happening and I don't perceive it. So I think when I'm in it and I'm doing a clearing, I am so dropped into kind of like turning this dial, hitting that button, breathing that one out, singing into the field so that it like clears something. And so I think like I'm so there. People will often say to me, like, I'm worried you're going to see something that I can't see. And I'm like, I'm actually not looking at you. Like, and so during the chronic condition study, one of the things that came up is there would be like, there was like one day that I did the clearing and cocaine came through. And it came through a couple times. And so I posted on the message board, hey, I just want to let you guys know it came through and was being cleared. Like if anybody has been affected by this or it's in your being, I just want to let you know because I often won't speak when it's a big group because there's too much. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. What were you gonna say about grids?
Yeah, so in working with the grids, it's a little bit different. It's the same process, but I think it's a little bit different because I'm moving really big bodies and because you don't have the human piece to it. And in some ways it's a bit easier without that because there's just no it's not yeah, it's just different. It's hard to explain.
So what do you think the grids are, those non-human bodies?
Sometimes it's the grids of the patriarchy, things like that, like the a grid of the patriarchy. It could be a grid of like war, like genocide. Sometimes it's a land grid. Sometimes it's actually the coherent grid that like we all live in as kind of the backbone or the motherboard of reality. And that motherboard of reality is being rewired, and I have a piece of helping it rewire. Um,
So
yeah,
these tend to come to you like while you're sleeping and dreaming, or is it
yeah.
you wake up, or what's that like?
It's like I wake up and then I'm in like deep, deep trance. And I could lay there like frozen in trance for hours, just running the energy and just using my breath or my eyes or whatever. I mean, I'm not doing anything. The field is basically using me. And I have learned how to dance with. Oh, you're frozen.
I
Oh,
think
you're
it
back.
might have just come back, yeah. But everything came through.
Yeah. 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 It's like a dance partner. You know, when you get a new dance partner, you have to learn their steps. You have to learn how not to step on their toes. You have to learn what you're to dance with the field where like we know each other now.
So do you end up working with
Yeah.
the same grids over time?
I don't know. Probably. I actually don't even know. And I'm so tired when I wake up that like I'm also often not inquiring. Like it's
Yeah.
just moving and I'm moving with it. There's also a phenomena that like if I do not move enough erotic energy during the day, I cannot. It has to engage. It has to be in relationship. It's all relationship. And so if I go through a day where like the only thing I have is a conversation on Zoom, but there's no in-person conversations and there's no intimacy, I will not be able to sleep at all.
Is that what you're saying? You cut out a little before. If you don't move enough erotic energy during the day, then you can't sleep?
Yeah. Yeah. It won't let me sleep.
Hmm. Okay, we talked a little bit about all of the conversations that are happening at any given time, like conversations within a conversation or even conversations outside of a technical conversation. You said something to me yesterday. I think you referenced it again today of like part of that conversation is things that are dead and the ghosts. What's that like for you? What are the ghosts?
So qualitatively, the ghosts feel like relics. Like when there's kind of a ghost in the field, it's like an echo or an impression rather than a fullness. And so I can sense the echo, and if or it might need more touching to respond. There's something about the quantum aspect of like not only seeing something but naming it and touching it that like brings it back to life. Like it lights it back up. It's almost as if the lights have gone out. And it's different than if it's like, well, nothing is ever dead. But it's like in, let's say, okay, let's say in somebody who has had chronic anorexia, like long time, everything looks like a relic. Like almost everything looks like bones, and the substance is like far back or more like an echo or like located somewhere else. And so there's this process of like re-inhabiting, like getting the field to wake back up so that it could receive the soul substance back again. And on a tangible level, the tangibles that are happening there are like somebody is beginning to decide whether they trust me. I am beginning to know their energy from like their other energy, the other energies that they carry. I am identifying the places where the malignancy is trying to manipulate or clone or distract. So I get to know their patterns around that. So there's like this dance happening between me and them that may take longer than with somebody else. But there's this piece about, in a soul retrieval, a traditional shaman will go into a soul retrieval and find the pieces of the piece that has been left out and kind of pull it back and blow it back into the body. But what I have found is that like you can do that, but it's going to leave it again if the body isn't alive, because it's like dead in there. No one wants to come back to that. So you kind of need to like do a process of waking it back up, refeeding it, like touching it, moisturizing it, like kneading it. And then there can be this kind of retrieval piece, which often can begin to happen on its own just from you making the soil moist again.
I love this. I love this. I love the way you talk about refeeding. This is reminding me. So we recorded a podcast before, maybe a year and a half ago or something, about shame. And you talked about this a little bit in that podcast of like often when you're starting to work with somebody, like this is what they need at the beginning for a long time. Like they don't even need talk therapy for a while. It's like just refeeding. Um,
Yes.
it lands for me as like a very feminine quality. There's so much there about love and care, and like maybe it looks different for different people. It seems like mine has a lot to do with just like spending so much time in nature. Lately it's been the ocean and just like imbibing. And I don't really hear people talk about that. Something else that was coming up for me listening to you just now is something that I love about your model is like you're doing such focused work in this session, but you're often also pointing me to things in my life that my being needs to be doing. It is like
Yeah.
here to be doing certain things, and it is going to be fucking angry or depressed or whatever about not doing those things. And
Yes.
sometimes I can't hear what those are, and like you are like, Jane, you got to be doing that. And I can feel when you say it and when you point me to it, and then when I actually do it, you know. But this is such a piece that I don't find in a lot of spiritual lineages and stuff is like, we need certain things that are really specific to us. And that seems like another piece of this language that you speak is like, your being needs this like now. It needed it like yesterday. Like, go get it.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I mean, I think this is the piece of how starving, or how like starved is a better word for it, that almost all of us have been, and so starved and so replaced with substitutes to that, the thing that we're actually starving for, that there's instructions that often come through about, like, again, preparing the soil, making it flexible again, making it fluid, making it receptive. I think it's so crazy that we take people who are in the most chronic conditions, addiction, eating disorders, long-term PTSD, all of these things, and we throw them into these spaces of healing where they're talking all the time, processing all the time. Most of the time, they're just dying to A, have sex, and B, be fed. Like, you got to do that for a good hot minute before anybody's going to even know what the fuck they're talking about. Because most of the shit they're telling you is a recording. It's the recording that everybody has told them, that they've been telling themselves. There's a whole narrative about their illness that is in there. I don't want to hear that recording. Boring. Like, just go have some really good sex and some really good food. And then, like, let's actually have the real conversation. And, I had built this years ago, maybe 8 years ago. Somebody had asked me if I would like build a template for a residential eating disorder program. And I built it. It was a long time ago. There's things I would do differently now because 8 years is like 300 for me. But there was a piece there about the idea that when somebody comes, they just need to be held. Like, you just need to actually hold that person, and they actually need to be fed things that their body could learn to balance in their gut, and they need to be out in nature, and they need very, very little engagement because they're addicted to the engagement as a form of absence within themselves. And so I have this amazing, amazing plan that could be for eating disorders, but for everything else in mental health. And I don't see anything like this. We don't even understand that this is necessary.
Yeah, one of the things I'm most appreciating in this conversation, hearing you talk about the layers that you work, and then also the way that you were talking about preparing the soil. I don't know, it's so beautifully, just really appreciating all of this richness and fullness. Like, those words don't even feel like they can get to the thing that I'm feeling as you talk about it, which is just like really appreciating what like a universe, even a single person is, and the language that it takes to speak to that and know it and honor it and um, help it live the life that it wants to live. Like, I'm really
Yeah.
moved hearing the respect and care for the intricacy and again, even intricacy doesn't feel like a strong enough word because it's so multifaceted too.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like things like beauty and joy and vitality and respect and integrity, those seem to be the things that are the motivating force for me, of like, just that this is all here, and we're spending so much time either trying to reproduce it because it's absent in our day, like, because we don't recognize how it already is here, so we're spending a lot of time and money trying to manufacture it. And also because we don't have we don't have people who talk about how to get to a place where you can really get there without 300 lifetimes of practice. And so I think it feels really intimidating. Like, you have to do this spiritual thing or this, healing thing, and I'm like, you guys, it's so much easier and cheaper than most of us understand. And it's so accessible. But I find that what's really missing is the view is really off. The view is not complete enough. Very, very incomplete, very fractured, um, and and very lacking in the depth of wisdom of the simplicity of things. There's a real simplicity to things that I have a very big affinity for. I mean, you know me, I love luxury. Like, please send me to a five-star hotel. Like, I'm all about the luxury, right? I love beautiful things. But I often find that, like, in the world in the West of luxury, it's like so adorned. It's so trying to be something. And so I would rather take like a simple cabin in the woods where there's like five pieces of furniture, but they were curated beautifully for that cabin. To me, that is the aesthetic that I love. It's like both bare and complete, and it has so much devotion in the way it has been like it, there's no rush, there's no force. It's just the waiting for the right thing. And when the right thing is there, immediately you're acting on it because you know that you're already ready for that thing when it shows up. It's like you've tended the soil so that immediately when it's there, there's no thinking. Your body knows, and you go with that thing. And it's like that to me is always being alive, always being at the ready. And there's no thinking about that. It's because you have attuned yourself to this devotion to aliveness that is so strong that in a millisecond, if your attention lands on something and it is right for you, you lock on and then you're in it. And one of the biggest problems I have had and suffered with through this process is that when I know it and I try to run towards it, everybody else is trying to analyze it, or they're hanging back, or they're trying to figure out how to like make the thing happen. And I'm like, I'm already done. I have the thing already. I'm already having sex with it. And everybody is still talking. And it is really hard. It's really hard because by the time they've caught up, I'm gone. I'm out of that room. I'm not there. And then I have to put myself back in that room because now they want to have that conversation because it's really frustrating. It's
Yeah.
like blue balls all the time.
Yeah.
And and so I think there's this like when people are around me more and we're intimate in these ways, their fields start to know it and they love it. They're like, I can go with you there. I can go with you there. Like, yeah. And this hooks into a whole other piece that we should talk about in part two about why people can't act. Like, what is the problem about how like horrible things are happening and everybody is just standing there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something coming up for me that I've heard you touch on a little bit at various points over the years that feels like there is some what you're describing just there in that dynamic. It feels like there's something important in the like baseline orientation around like
Yes.
control and manageability.
Yes.
Um, I remember you saying, I think this was something you and Rosa Lewis did in a recorded conversation. You said something that really stuck with me along the lines of like people hold on to this idea that life is going to be manageable. And
Yeah.
that really stayed with me. I think I don't know if this is right, but it's jumping out at me that like it feels like there's a fundamental difference in those viewpoints that you're talking about. And one is coming from a stance of like, well, how do I like control and manage this thing versus like,
Yes.
how do I fuck it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly that's 100% it. How do I fuck it? Yes. Right. And is it worth fucking?
Right.
Yeah, those are like the two key questions that I'm navigating all the time. And that could change with somebody at any moment. Like in an instant that could change. But but yeah, I think the key thing about control is that most people are walking around with that stance of it is my job to make something that is inherently unmanageable manageable. You know, when people go through a legitimate awakening, one of the things that really is the rubber meets the road is that you cannot manage a real awakening. You just can't. And every effort that you try to do that will result in you actually being really sick. Like you double down on that and you're going to get really sick because there's an order to that chaos that is yours to learn how to respect, not manage. And that's where humility comes from. Is like really taking yourself down 1,000 notches. And humility is not collapse. Those are very different. Most people just collapse. That's not humility. That's not yielding. That's actually just falling over because you feel powerless. A journey of awakening is a journey of power. And that requires the humility to not know, to get out of the way, and to stay upright as much as possible. That is very, very subtle.
I love that. It feels like a really not just the yielding, but something about the messiness. I don't know why this feels important to say, but it feels like there's a very feminine quality in that too. It's like a
Yeah, chaos.
respect for the feminine chaos. Yeah, and just like not needing to at the end of the day like have a stamp on top of that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when it was more disorganized for me, I would come home and if you watched my movement pattern, it would look like crazy. There was like a pile of stuff on the stairs, and for some reason, I would ignore that. But then I'd go into the kitchen and I'd start making dinner, but like I'd get halfway through, and then I'd be in the bedroom and I'd be like starting the bath, but then I'd be starting the wash, but then I'd be answering a phone call. But let me tell you, shit got done. More shit got done in that 15 minutes than most people get done in like a whole day because I was just respecting the way that it was moving.
I love that.
Yeah.
This has been so fun. I feel like we just drove like 1,000 miles. Like that was
Probably.
a really cool, varied terrain. Is there anything, yeah, my body feels like I've been on this whole journey. Is there anything that still feels like really present for you or anything that you want to name that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think it feels really present for me that this is the more esoteric conversation, and then there's a more kind of tangible conversation. Like I was giving the example with somebody who's had long-term anorexia. There's also a tangible conversation about how that yang piece for me has to do with being the right predator and what that is. So I think there's like a kind of stay tuned.
Cool.
Like this feels like it sets the stage, and there's a second piece that has more like tangible application that I think people would really be interested in.
That sounds super fun. I'm in.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bree. This was really, really fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.